Hey, welcome back to the Relentless Positivity Podcast. Zoom gets me every time.
That is one thing that I am familiar with is the glitchiness of Zoom.
That's it. So yeah, so thank you for tuning in. I got a guest today that I'm so excited about having on. It's Dr. Daniel Adamek. He's the executive director of Little Orange Fish. He's a chief science officer at Cohesion Force. And he's a partner with Inner Defense Initiative. So you're a busy guy. Thank you so much for coming on.
Well, thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Happy to be here.
Yeah. So a big thing that I like is people's origin stories. So kind of how did you get where you are these days?
Well, I moved to Huntsville almost 20 years ago. I went to grad school at Florida State. Actually, I did all work on the microgravity program for NASA. And in that, I was I was a biophysicist in the microgravity lab, working on bioastronautics and basic research in protein crystal growth. So that's my background from that brought me here. The funding for those efforts ran out shortly after I moved here, and so I had to figure out what else I was going to do to pay the bills. And so at that time, I was doing a lot of education outreach work and technology management kind of work, working with community programs and working with local businesses to help transfer the technologies that they were developing in their labs into products. So, and I've done that basically since then for, now a little over 15 years. And so when I started Little Orange Fish, which that may be let's tell the Little Orange Fish story after we get through this part. And so I've done a lot of different things in a multitude of different directions, but all of it has been related to dealing with technologies and taking them from wherever they are, whether it's basic research, all the way to productizing them. And that's what I enjoy doing. And that really is kind of the same principle that I'm using for Little Orange Fish. Yeah. And the Inner Defense Initiative, for that matter.
Yeah, so you're like Iron Man. So you're over there doing like Iron Man type stuff. You're doing on the research stuff. That's cool. So yeah, you mentioned Little Orange Fish. So kind of tell how that started and tell us a little bit about how that.
So 8 years ago, in October, I lost my son to suicide. And he had, while he was in care, while we were trying to find help for him, he had very quickly that year in 2013, he had come down, he'd gotten very of a mental health care facility for adolescents. One of the exercises he had to do was to write a story about his feelings. And that story was about a little orange fish. And I didn't find that story until I was on the way to plan his funeral arrangements. So that was the impetus, but the real driver behind the mission was not just that moment, but the whole story, his and mine and all of those around us. And so I try to be clear that Little Orange Fish is really about trying to get the point across that mental health is everybody's concern.
Absolutely.
We all have to take care of our and mental health is just another aspect of our health. It's not distinct from physical health. It's a critical aspect of our entire health.
Absolutely. And something you say that I was going to touch on a little bit later, we can get into it right now. Is one of your things is a strong community starts with healthy individuals and good health starts with a healthy mind. So kind of touch on that a little bit, what you mean by that.
So hopefully it's a pretty clear statement.
Yeah.
The So we as a community, as a society, we're only as healthy as the individuals that make us up, and a big part of that is the connection. Well, the biggest part of that is the connection between us. And so if any of the people who we live with, who and are close to, even those that we aren't close to, that we share the same space with, um, our health is dependent on their health, and vice versa. And so it really is say that we need to understand each other and take care of each other, and when we need help, whatever the nature of that help is, we need to figure out how to make sure that help is there.
Absolutely. I mean, through the centuries, that's how people have done it. That's how we've depended on each other for survival. And I think the further we get away from each other, the less there is. And, that's going to affect us in major ways that we didn't even think about. We depend so much on technology. I mean, you're a tech guy, you know that, but you see how important the mental health side is. So what all do you guys do at Little Orange Fish?
So that's you mentioned the connections to technology, and that is really the model that I have built Little Orange Fish around. I've basically been a systems integrator, for lack of a better term, in this community. Trying to pull all the pieces together to make things work. And if that's a widget, how do we get that widget put into use? And that's not just about making the widget work as good as it can. It's about bringing all of the connections together and making sure that widget gets into the right hands doing what it was intended to do. And so it's the same principle here, is trying to look for who in the community does what and bring them together so we can remove the barriers of access, and improve the connections between those individuals, organizations.
Yeah,
And
it's so important. You know, just connection is so important to humans, and we're losing a lot of that, especially through the pandemic. Did you guys see big changes? Were you able to help people more with the connection through technology?
so yes and no. So the mission of Little Orange Fish is first and foremost education, and that education piece is really focused on helping us as individuals and the people we live with understand not only the importance of mental health, what it means to uh, us as individuals and those around us, but also the importance of mental health care and access to that, and when and how to get access to those resources.
Absolutely.
And so as far as 2020 was concerned, we have distributed a tool set to teachers called Cognito, and I think we're going to talk about that
Sure. Yeah.
some later. And that was ideally suited for the virtual environment. There were some on the other hand, it was very difficult during 2020 to try and figure out how to navigate, just like everybody else. Everybody else was going through, of course, large transitions, and so there's still a lot to be learned from the pandemic, and there is a lot being revealed about what it did to us as a society, what it did to us as individuals, and so I can't say that it was easier or harder. It was just different.
Right. Yeah. So it's on your shirt right now. It's something you say a lot. So feelings are real, which is, I think, something that people don't realize how important that statement is, that, just like your son was going through, maybe you didn't know exactly all that he was going through, that his feelings are real, and, is he just being a teenager, so kind of touch on what does that mean, and what does that mean to you personally?
So it means a number of different things, but it's all literal.
Yeah.
The idea, again, going back to this misconception that mental health and physical health are different things. Ultimately, our health is we measure it in how we feel, no matter what it is. I mean, the measure of that is how we feel. And when it comes to our psychology, the emotions and feelings that they really are the drivers of the decisions we make and our behavior. And that equally applies to our physical behavior, our, the underpinnings of who we are is based in our feelings. And then to go another layer deep, we can, through the recent technologies, we can see that those feelings through magnetic resonance imaging, and chemical tests. And that's one of the things that we're looking at on the Inner Defense Initiative, is the chemistry that has set the stage for the things that we feel and the behaviors that we do.
Yeah, I think it's so important for people to hear that, what you're feeling, it's okay how you feel. It's not, you're not a bad person because you feel like that, and it's not your fault, and all these things that people, they go into that spiral where it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse because they feel terrible about it. But it's okay. It's okay how you feel, and it's natural. That's part of you. It's okay, and I think that's an important message that you're getting out there. So, so what are some depression signs that people can look for? I know that's something that you guys help people find that out.
Well, let me step back and talk about that aspect of what you just mentioned about. It's important to understand that when you feel bad, that's a natural thing, and it's an important thing. Distress is absolutely critical. So when we do feel a certain way, it's never a good idea to ignore that. Those feelings are there for a reason.
Right.
And so that's to your next question, signs of depression. Those can be a broad range of things. And so there's the outward signs that you can look for in your friends, and that is, withdrawal, and sometimes there's uncharacteristic, anger, or just, as probably the most recognizable is when somebody becomes more withdrawn, and when that lasts for a long period of time. And it's essential to understand. Often depression is described as sadness that lasts for a long duration, but that's not really an adequate description in my opinion. Depression is it really is much deeper than simple sadness. It really it can come with significant delusion, where your own brain is begins to lie to you, and your perception of the world becomes very different. It can be a very dark place. So that is important, and we've come a long way just in the last 8 years since, with greater visibility to celebrities and more and more so are talking about their struggles with not only depression, but mental health issues and emotional issues across the board.
Yeah, just getting it out in the light. We just met not too long ago, but when I was 18 years old, I was suicidal. I went through a bunch of stuff going on at the same time, and I was this close,
Mhm.
to making that ultimate decision. And I didn't really have many outward signs. People, maybe if they studied me pretty close, but maybe in some small things. But on the outside, really, I was kind of the same old person. So it's kind of, you got to be pretty dialed in to kind of notice some of these things. So
Yeah.
if you do kind of notice something, what can people do? What first of all, what not to do? I know there's a lot of things that you guys help out with what not to do. So let's start there.
Well, you mentioned your own experience, and I mean, still today, people look at suicide as a selfish act, and I don't know what your own personal experience. Everybody's experience is different, but it is not, when somebody is severely depressed. Um, there is a complete disconnect. So their acts can can uh, there is no way to even consider what oneself is, and what I mean. There's almost a perception that you lack a self with respect to the rest of the world, and so it's important, for those who have not experienced depression, not to just say, buck up and get over it, because that is impossible. That is not a path forward. Um, Being there, being supportive, and making sure that you try and find the help, and everybody, the help that every individual needs is very individual. And so it is a that is one thing where mental health care is significantly more complicated than your typical, what we call physical health care, because it is trying to get those subjective ideas out of a delusional mind because of the depression is very, very difficult, and trying to measure progress is very, very difficult. And so finding the right therapist, the right counselor, that's key. Oftentimes, medication is essential to stabilize, and ideally, there is a path away from medication. Not There's nothing wrong with medication, but there's certainly, ideally, trying to work through whatever the core issues. If they're chemical in foundation, then in their then medication is going to be essential. And then, because psychotropic medications, those that change the way we think and feel, are so powerful and not entirely well understood, it's critical that every individual maintain a good relationship with their doctors. And so we have to build a system where that kind of support is there, where there are no barriers in the way of people getting to that help as fast as they possibly can. And it's not just about preventing suicide; it's about dealing with the massive amounts of suffering. That, in my mind, that is the more important thing. If we deal with that, not only will we mitigate and get in front of the suicides, that will go down, but we'll also you know be a much happier community. And it goes back to strong community is built of those healthy individuals.
That's right. Yeah, there's a lot of people walking around just do not want to be here. It's just, and then maybe they're not going to commit suicide, but they're just going to have this life where they're not a
That's
healthy
right.
person their entire life. I mean, physically they may be fine, but mentally and emotionally they're not. So we'll talk
And
about some things that you guys are kind of doing to help prevent some of that. So touch on cognito. You talked about it a little bit earlier. So what is that?
thank you for saying that, by the way. That's that piece of it, just to step back and talk about, to reiterate that people can live a whole life and be unhappy, and that is something we should aspire to get rid of. Nobody should live an unhappy
It
life.
doesn't have to be like that. Yeah.
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 So Cognito is a toolkit. It's a virtual game playing environment, and Cognito has several dozen different products. The one that we've been using is called the At-Risk series, and there are 3 modules, one for elementary school, one for middle school, and one for high school teachers. And the objective, it's a virtual environment that's set up to provide coaching to help teachers not become mental health experts. That's not the objective. The objective is to give them enough information to understand the signs and symptoms of when their students are in some sort of emotional or distress, and build a rapport with them. So it's really a communication tool to and that will not push away the students, and then help them navigate getting those students to the help that they need. So that is the biggest focus. It's really a communication tool.
That's awesome, because they're on the front lines. They see a lot of the stuff that maybe
Yeah.
the parents don't do. So that's great. You guys are getting it out there. So something else you guys are doing, the Inner Defense Initiative. I think this is an absolute game changer. It's amazing, and I want more people to know about it. So tell us about that.
So this goes back. This is a literal demonstration of feelings are real. So PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, is it's something that we're more and more familiar with, and that is it's nothing new. But with the ongoing war in the Middle East, we've seen a large percentage of veterans coming back from service over there, with recurring nightmares, all of the symptoms that I think are pretty well understood now. Withdrawal, some of the same symptoms that we described that go with depression, and the suicide rate among those with PTSD is extremely high. And so there is a survey and certain criteria that have to be administered by a licensed professional, and the interpretation of that survey is where we get a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress. What we're doing with the Inner Defense Initiative is we're looking at that underlying chemistry that goes along with the to couple it with that survey. So did an initial pilot study about 9 years ago, and that was with Dr. Joe Ng at UAH, where looked at 50 or so veterans. 11 of those were suffering from post-traumatic stress, and 10 of those 11 shared a biochemical marker, namely a protein marker that's related, an antibody, so a marker from the immune system. And so that was a clear connection. There'd already been some evidence there was a connection between the immune system and psychological trauma, and there's a very clear connection between depression and inflammation, for instance, which inflammation is the first responder of your immune system. So what the Inner Defense Initiative is to reproduce those early results, and identify other markers that can help us describe every individual's situation. As I mentioned, about depression, and it's the same goes for any other disorder. It's all highly individual. So we are working towards a blood-based marker kit that can be coupled with the psychological survey, so we can really kind of put a profile together to help the individual understand how susceptible they are to post-traumatic stress, and how to potentially how to best treat it, what treatments will be effective, what treatments won't, and so that is the path we are on, and there's still a long way to go, a lot of research to do, and we are busy at it right now and looking for volunteers to provide blood samples and surveys. It's all done anonymously, so your survey and the blood sample goes in with a number associated with it, and working towards a way to when we do start to get the results in from the way that if you want to get those, you provide your number and you can get those numbers back.
Yeah.
So
it's
really
my kit today, so I got all my stuff
as,
right here. So I got
excellent.
just got
Yeah.
mine.
So
Mine in the mail.
I think of this as a citizen science program. So this really is, again, going back to it's a community effort, and so to get the community engaged in the research is absolutely critical, not only for getting good data and getting a broad range of individual types, so we can do the very best we can to get that individualized approach, but also again back to that awareness, understanding of bringing community in, so we understand each other's we understand this thing that we call post-traumatic stress and how it is impacting each of us and the community that much better. So it is a connection effort as well.
Man, you guys are doing amazing work. Every time I hear it's like, man, we are living in the future. This is crazy. That's amazing. You guys are discovering what you guys are doing right here in little old Huntsville, Alabama. A lot of cool stuff going on around here.
It is very cool.
Yeah. So man, how can people get involved? So I'll link all the in the show notes how to get the survey and the blood kit and all that good stuff. What other ways can people help out?
Well, if you go to, I suspect you'll put that link in there, interdefense.org or littleorangefish.org, and you can go get to the Interdefense site there as well. You can sign up for the kit there. I suspect you did it from that.
Yeah, I had a QR code, super simple. I sent away, came in like 2 days. Got to my house in 2 days. So man, it's super easy. Yeah.
And so that is the easiest way to do it. So and then of course, this is again a community-driven effort right now. All of the funds going to support this have been from donations at this point. We are looking at some grant funding and some other contract funding. So, Interdefense is made up of a number of organizations and individuals. I Express Genes is the primary driver on the industrial side, and they are working to put the kit together, and we hope to see that become an available product soon out of this as well, which will really be a game changer, as you put it.
Absolutely. Very exciting. Hey, you know what else is exciting? Sponsors. Very exciting to have sponsors. So we'll hit these real quick and then we'll wrap things up. So I appreciate your time. So the first one, explorehuntsville.com/Joe. Huntsville is growing. It's going to be the biggest city in Alabama. So it's going to be tough to explore it. So if you go to their website, explorehuntsville.com/Joe, you can get a free app and it'll tell you all the stuff. They got their summer guide in there, turn by turn directions, all that. It's got some good technology there. You'd probably appreciate that. So explore.com/Joe. explorehuntsville.com/Joe. Go there, get your free app. Otherwise, it costs $4 million. You don't want that. So you don't want to pay that. So also, if you want to refinance your house, Dominic Garver, friend of mine, played football with him, known him 20 plus years. So I wanted to refinance my house, but he looked at my numbers, said, you don't need anything. You're good. Like, all right, he didn't try to sell me on anything. So he helped out a local veteran, let them take 10 years off their loan and lower their monthly payment. It's pretty good. So you can give him a call at 256-714-1429 or rocketcitymortgageguy.com. And then finally, we got a Paralab. So I get all my fancy shirts from a Paralab right here. This little fancy shirt right here. So you can email them at theapparelab@gmail.com. Use promo code Relentless, save money on your shirts, whatever you want. If you want to put your face on a shirt, we've done that for people before. So if you want to do that, check them out, theapparelab@gmail, because the life's too short to wear boring shirts. All right, thank you for sitting in on those. So, hey, I appreciate your time, and I really appreciate what you're doing for our community and beyond. You're honoring your son's memory in a way that's so impactful, and that's the way it should happen. You should never let something like that go by without honoring that person like that. So I really appreciate, like I said, I went through something similar, and I'm glad I pulled out in the end. And thank you. There's no telling how many people you've helped.
Well, I appreciate it. Hey, can I put a plug in, a last minute
Absolutely. Plug away.
Your apparel.
Yeah.
You go to littleorangefish.org. You can get a Feelings Are Real t-shirt there.
Oh, I'm gonna buy one. I need one of those. Cool. Like I said, thank you so much. Thank you so much coming on. I'm gonna be sporting that shirt around town. So thank you so much coming on, and I appreciate all that you're doing. Hope you have a great day.